Welcome to Scuba Diver Live. We're back. It's another live stream coming direct into your home, aiming to inspire and educate, as well as give you a bit of fun in this time when everyone could be feeling a little bit down with the COVID-19 pandemic. Just remember, if you like what we're doing, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell. You'll never miss out on any of our future installments because we've got a lot of stuff coming up over the next few weeks. Remember, leave your comments. Let us know what you like. Tell us who you'd like to see in any of the future installments we're doing. We'll always try and oblige, see if we can dig up some new, fresh guests for you. Remember, if you're watching us live, you can leave some questions for our guests tonight. And then when we get towards the end of the broadcast, we'll be asking them their questions. So fire away and we'll see what comes up. But before we bring on our guests tonight, I'd just like to say thank you to MeFlex Hoses, our sponsors. They are flexible, durable, and they add a bit of colour to your kit. It's not all about black. There's a realm of colours out there, and so you can stand out from the crowd. So check them out, especially now while we can't go diving at the moment properly. Get your kit sorted. You will be ready to go. So on with today's show, and we're all about citizen science with our guests who are going to be on the virtual sofa with us. First up, we've got Tim Clement. Now, Tim is a recreational technical diving instructor. He heads up IANTD in the UK, and he's also the manager of Vobster Quay inland dive site down in Somerset. He's been involved in underwater science projects for a long time, from his very early days in diving, and he's very passionate about developing this side of diving and passing on his knowledge. So I'd like to welcome Tim onto the virtual sofa.
Good evening. Thank you, Mark.
Good to have you. Good to have you. So, as we said, you've been doing this for a long, long time, but how did you first get into diving?
It was all to do with a degree, really. So studying marine biology and oceanography, very much the idea that you can't really study the oceans without getting into the ocean. And so go to university, start diving, be in the club, eventually go to some lectures as well. So very much a very practical based period of 3 years. I came at that as an advanced diver, moved on to commercial diving, scientific diving, and then aquarium construction, public communication, and it sort of goes on from there, really.
Right, so you actually, I know we said that you're a recreational instructor, you're also a technical diving instructor and everything, obviously with IANTD, but it actually sounds like that came later on to an extent, but it sounds like it was more the scientific side of diving, which was more the beginning part of your role.
Yes, absolutely. I was lucky enough to spend 3 summers in Loch Hyne in Southern Ireland as part of my degree and other stuff afterwards. And that was a month, 6 weeks each time. Loch Hyne is this amazing sea loch with one water inlet. Water rushes in for 4 hours and seeps out gradually for 8 hours. So it's got a whole load of habitats, from silt to rock, loads of communities. You can use it as a living laboratory. So that's where I was. I wanted to develop those skills. That sort of led round in a circle, really, to being a commercial diver and looking for a part-time job. Bit of work at Deep Sea World led to 6 years of aquarium diving, animal collection, and conservation projects to do with aquariums.
Okay. So, yeah, so I must have been interested then, working in aquariums and everything. Was it most of the stuff you were doing there, was it more the UK based animal cold water stuff, or were you doing some tropicals as well?
I've always been very much UK based, really. I think it was about 8 years before I actually dived on a coral reef, probably about another 6 years before I dived on a coral reef again. So this was initially based in Scotland, so we had animal collection trips there. We had a memorable trip to the west coast of Ireland, where we ended up trying to use one of those underwater sledge things with the movable fins on each side to do a long transect work looking for angel sharks. And this was the days before DPVs. So there's me being towed along behind a boat in my 12 and a 3, sort of trying to get the hang of this thing. And really things went on from there. I started diving, technical diving, 20 years ago. I got involved in that for a while, less of the conservation, more video. But really, what kind of sets this up for citizen science is working in an aquarium. You understand the hook that things have for people, and the underwater stories really engage people. But the people who are already engaged are the divers. So we can get visitors to buy into conservation, but what could we do with these people who are already underwater? Everyone else is jealous. So really that sort of set a little seed there, and that's grown into a sort of commitment to citizen science that I'm trying to develop now through photogrammetry, surveys, some more scientific diver training, and trying to enthuse people who come to Vobster.
Well, that leads me on to the next one, really, which was to talk about some of the projects that you've been involved with over the years, which was like both in this country and abroad. As you said, most of your stuff being UK based, and it was really just to find out some of the projects you've been in and how different they were.
Well, after the sort of aquarium one, there came a technical diving project in Menorca. This is the Bull Ring tour. I did a little chat about that the other week. And that was going along with a bunch of guys who worked for 990 magazine to dive what was a snoaty that was at 50 meters in the ocean. The top of it was at 50 and the bottom of it was at 70. And this was literally my kind of sort of first major sea dives after doing sort of full trimix in a lock-like environment. So that was pretty exciting. Moving on, did some survey work. And interestingly, one of those projects was around Lundy. We were doing a survey for the sunset cut coral. And interestingly, sort of 12 years later, that involvement has grown into what should have been the Lundy Marine Festival this year, which is a 3-month-long citizen science, bioblitz, surveys, reef photogrammetry, all kinds of really bringing lots of technology, some deeper diving projects, bit of technical diving, some shallow water diving, sea search observing. And sadly, that's all been postponed now for obvious reasons, but it should have begun in about 3 weeks' time.
I was just going to say to you, actually, with that was, obviously all the, projects you've done in the past, but were there any projects that you had coming up that had been impacted by the coronavirus? So they are preempted. But are you looking at rescheduling that for next year? Is that the plan so that everyone who was going to be involved can still do it? Yes, absolutely.
I think it's too early to say. Yeah, definitely the organisers really, really want to run this. We had lined up our 3 boatloads of people for various dates over the summer. That was just us at Vobster. And what we said was, all right, we can go and do these projects. They can suit any diver. Please do a Sea Search Observer course first so that you're maximum use for this and it's enjoyable. And then we can match you up with projects on the days that you like. You can see it all come together. And for those people with more technical ability, we can start to make use of these tools that recreational divers and sport divers have taken just to go that step further in the same safety that we used to have diving at 30 meters. We can look at citizen science beyond 40, maybe 50. That's a really exciting angle to the advances in diving coming back to help conservation.
Well, that brings me on to your other role, as well as your IANTD hat. You're obviously the face of Vobster Quay that everyone knows when they come and see your site in Somerset. How does having access to such a site, obviously on a daily basis, benefit you for the citizen science side of things? I would imagine that it is a good location for practicing at least the physical side of it, the diving skills and everything.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how people move through their diving. So in the 14 years that I've been there, I've seen several generations of divers come and go. And what strikes me occasionally is that people get to a point and they think, oh, you see their enthusiasm go up as they learn new things. They do stuff they never thought they could do. And then gradually, sometimes it wanes a little bit early. And you think, why is that? And it's because they've got into doing various certs. They've always gone to the next level. But then somehow they've sort of lost that interest. And you can have conversations with people about their desire to contribute to ocean conservation. So that's the sort of observational side. The other side is that Vobster Quay has been an arc site for white-clawed crayfish. I've got a slide somewhere, actually. If that works, I think this one's pretty cool. One of these, if that's showing at the moment. Sorry, I might have blown that there.
No,
there we go.
Yeah,
there it is. Got it. So one of those, that looks huge there, but in fact they're about the sort of size of kind of the palm of your hand and a bit bigger. And they're a native species of crayfish which are endangered. They've had a lot of pressure on them from American signal crayfish. A lot of people know a bit about that. And we've had a program with them being introduced to Vobster for the last 12 years, and that they've flourished in numbers, and we've used divers to report sightings informally, so where they are, so we know that they've spread from where they were released. We know that they're flourishing. We see new areas of them pop up from time to time. So that's been really cool, and the engagement people have had with that really indicates that they're ready to take these skills one step further. So I think we'd like to expand on our diver spottings in the coming season, what's left of it. And since the crayfish activity peaks in the autumn, we've still got a chance to really sort of gain some knowledge, which only divers can give us from that program.
Yeah, and they look so cute. How would you not want to look after them little fellas?
Well, exactly. I mean, they're amazing. You go around what you think is an old quarry, which is, you know, full of aircraft bits and cars and things that we've added because people like it. And you just take a swim 20 meters further away on a night dive in the autumn, and you could see 15 or 20 of these, the numbers that have been reported at times. It just adds another dimension. That kind of ecological growth in the quarry has also enabled us to run a freshwater version of the Sea Search Observer course, which of course then sort of leverages that interest into doing something useful in the sea. And Sea Search is, of course, the largest citizen science diving program. It's been in existence for 30 years now.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. Like you say, they can kind of get a good base in the skills necessary in Vobster, and then, like I say, you're drawing them on. If you had been able to do your London trip this year, that they could have then put it into practice in the open sea, but at least they've actually had a go at doing it first before that.
Absolutely. People have time pressures, or they want to go to their favorite place, or whatever the motivations are. You can gain some benefit in freshwater, and really allows you a bit of trial and error to make most use of going diving in the sea. So that's an idea people are comfortable with. And I think it helps make that step as well. You can go and do a Sea Search dive anywhere. You know, once you are actually an observer, if you go for a dive, fill in a form, send it back, it contributes to the 800,000, nearly 800,000 species records which have been collected by regular divers throughout that time. There's a whole load of reports being written. Some divers have gone on to be surveyors, have written sort of like semi-academic books or academic books on sponge identification. It all comes out of data that citizen scientists have collected. And those citizen divers, scientist divers, they're regular people. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, no, which is great, you know, and anyone can get involved into that. But we'll touch on that a little bit later on. Back to you though for this one, just before we go and chat to our second guest. Most memorable diving experience. You've been diving a long time. What's your memorable diving experience?
There's quite a few. So I'm going to pick a scientific one, actually. And there is a slide for this because, is this the amusing one or the memorable one?
No, this is the memorable one.
The memorable one. Okay, well, I'm going to take a big slant away from citizen science for this one because 2 years ago, I ended up finally fulfilling one of my diving bucket list trips, which was to dive in Norway. So we had a charter on the Halton, and one of the dives towards the end of that week was the Wellheim, which is a huge wreck that goes from 50 meters on its side all the way down to 70. And this was one of the finest wreck dives that I've done, I think. There's quite a few that are up there, but this one really sticks in my mind as being what it was all about. World War II wreck, early cranes, like a bridge that's the size of the Vobster Quay building, machine gun nest on the corner, great big torpedo hole. It jumps back into your mind as one of those amazing dives. So that's up there in the top 3, I think.
Yeah, that does. Norway's definitely been on my list as well because I've seen lots of pictures just showing how clear the water is. So yeah, I'm a bit jealous of that one.
Well, I should be there in 3 weeks, but it's
well,
all gone.
You can feel bad about it now.
In there.
All right, so go on then. So that was the most memorable. What's your funniest diving experience?
Okay, well, one of the funniest ones is a science project. I'm going to find a picture here, which which should be Phil Shaw on a boat, I think, with me. Phil Shaw on a boat, it's an unusual thing. Here he is. There we go. I found it. So here we go. This is a scientific diving trip. And we have, I talked myself into this really because we've been talking about rebreathers and we've been talking about how far you could go with DPVs and really high-tech scientific diving with an ecologist. And they said, all right, okay, well, we need to do several miles of transect in a day looking for signal crayfish. Can we sort this out? So I said, yeah, for sure. So I phoned Phil up and asked him if he wanted in. And he just said, is this a straight up fight or a bug hunt? Because he liked quoting movies. And we headed off. Now, our boat for this particular expedition, this is Rob Franklin, by the way. He's a BBC cameraman and a cave diver. So we got him on board as the surface supervisor. We've got a boat driver. And this boat has got a dropped aluminium front, which we could use to recover us onto the boat, which slightly ungentlemanly and sort of quite wallowy at times. So we're proceeding with our scientific survey, and Phil and I are scootering along, got the whole entire, massive reservoir to ourselves. And when we pop up, we discover that Rob, far from being the relaxed surface supervisor we thought he'd been, working on his tan, but still wearing his wellies, safety purposes, has in fact been fending off the entire Oxford University boat crew who are trying to run us down in 4 meters of water with about 8 rowing aids. So that's one of the comedy moments that I've had over the years.
I would have liked to have seen the incident report for that one.
It's an awful lot of paperwork. So we managed to avoid this with appropriate risk control. And also, you'll notice a warning haircut. This was the tonsorial debut of 2019.
I like it. That's fantastic. Oh, well, on that particular moment, we'll let you retire to the green room and we'll see you again very shortly.
Thanks very much.
All right, mate. See you soon. Right, our second guest is Marcus Rose. Marcus is a GUE fundamentals and recreational instructor. He's Project Baselines regional coordinator in the UK. They support small local teams that are establishing and maintaining data collection processes, etc., etc. He is very passionate about project diving and citizen science as well, the same as Tim. So it'll be great to get him in and see what he thinks as well. So I'd like to welcome Marcus. All right, mate. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks very much for the invite.
No, it's good to have you here. It's good to have you here. Now, we obviously mentioned that you are a GUE instructor, but before we get into the citizen science side of things, how did you get started in diving? What was your route in?
So not 2 million miles away from what Tim was just telling us, actually. So as a young schoolboy, I was quite interested in the oceans, and I was quite keen on going to do a marine biology degree. It never came to fruition, but in preparation for going to do it, my parents sent me off to do a diving course in Portland, because we lived in Weymouth at the time. And that was me hooked, really. I did the open water course with Paddy, and every weekend then I was over in Portland enjoying the wrecks and the fantastic diving around the area. And I thought I would just show you one fairly early picture, just to show you that I wasn't always a diving black GUE diver. Hopefully you can see that pop up on the screen.
Fantastic. Bit of colour, loving the cross-leg hover position.
Yeah, it's a standard GUE diver, obviously, but that's in the Red Sea not long after learning to dive at quite a young age. But yeah, I was once I learned to dive, I was as hooked on the diving as I was by the things that interested me in going there in the first place. So that was kind of my route into it.
Yeah, very similar to Tim then, really, that it was that kind of route that was your leading in. So then you've started out, but what was your real introduction, if you like, into the world of citizen science?
So it wasn't all that long ago, to be honest. About maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I took a documentation diver course with Richard Walker down in Portland. Having gone through some technical diver training, I got to the point, I think, at which Tim explained in his introduction, whereby I felt that I had the diving weighed off, and I was looking for something else to do with that diving, something to give me a bit more sort of reward and that feeling of accomplishment when I was going out. And so I took this course and just really enjoyed it. It was just an introduction to gathering data underwater, taking basic images. And then not long after that, I did the Sea Search Observer course, which, as Tim has said, is a fantastic route into proper citizen science with a structured course that will teach you the basics to get you started. And that was my route into it, really, and then found Project Baseline and kind of it took off from there.
Yeah, fascinating. Now, you mentioned Project Baseline. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is for anyone who's not up to speed on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Project Baseline was originally started by GUE as their kind of conservation effort. It's since become its own independent project, so it's not sort of agency specific. But the idea behind it is that as divers, we have quite a privileged position that we get to go underwater and see what's in the oceans around where we live and wherever we travel to. And as generations go diving, they all think that what they're seeing is something that's fantastic and full of life. But inevitably, if you look at pictures over time, what you're seeing is undoubtedly changing, and not always for the better. And that's evidenced by what's happening around the world in some of the coral reefs. But if we want to take action and actually demonstrate that to people who don't dive and go and see it, you need some sort of data to be able to do that, in particular to demonstrate to government bodies and the like. So the idea of Project Baseline is that it allows passionate citizen science divers to go out and collect that data. Project Baseline runs a database that allows you to submit photos, visibility readings, temperature readings into that database that can then sit there and act as a record of what's happening over time. And the real beauty of Project Baseline for me is that it's really scalable. So if you're a novice recreational diver keen to get into project diving, you can literally find a site that you dive week in, week out in 4 or 5 meters of water, take a photo of the same thing every few months, take these temperature and data readings and submit them to the database, and that's you contributing. Or you can scale it all the way up to doing photogrammetry, getting involved with other, in collaboration with other conservation agencies, and take it as far as you want, really. So for me, that's the beauty of it. It's really scalable and accessible to any level of diver.
Yeah, which is great. And are there, obviously, like you said there, you can choose a site. It could be somewhere you dive regularly. You're doing that. Is it down with Project Baseline? Is it down to the diver to find the stuff? Are there organised projects that people that through Project Baseline that they could get involved with as well?
Yeah, so both are an option, really. So if you have a local dive site that you do dive really regularly, you can set up a Project Baseline site. So that involves you contacting Project Baseline through their website, and they'll give you the support you need to get that started. And essentially just submitting what you would already record as part of your logbook recordings or on your computer, submitting that into the database. And anybody can do that regardless of agency and experience. Here in the UK, there are a small number of fantastic local projects running. So we have one up here in Loch Long, which is now slowly expanding up into Oban and doing some more exciting stuff. There's a fantastic 2-person team up in the Isle of Skye recording fireworks and anemones in collaboration with Sea Search. And the Project Baseline Port Harbour Rex project is still running as well. And people can come and join these. So, for example, the Loch Long project, we do an annual weekend, which is a fantastic chance to meet up with lots of like-minded people, get involved in citizen science and build skill sets, but also just a great excuse to have a sort of a social event as well and do some fantastic diving. And plans afoot really for Project Baseline UK to try and expand that and do an annual project week somewhere whereby people can come from all over the UK and contribute to almost like a shop window project each year where we do something interesting and exciting, hopefully.
No, that sounds great. So your annual weekend you do, is that due to happen this year, or is that another one that's been impacted by COVID-19?
Yeah, so it was supposed to happen earlier this month, actually, and we were very excited to have Project Baseline's president come across from America to join us, but sadly it's been delayed. We're hoping to run it in October, so we've got the boats postponed until that date, and as long as we can travel and actually go diving, we'll do something in October with a boat up in Oban, a boat down in Loch Long as well, and hopefully lots of divers shore diving and collecting some data.
Oh, that's great. Oh, well, we can watch this space. I mean, fingers crossed by then. It looks like there is starting to be some movement in the right direction now. Obviously, as we know, shore diving in a limited capacity is being opened up in England. Hopefully, Scotland and Wales won't be too far behind. And we can, just start building up. But hopefully by October, fingers crossed, it'd be nice to see that going ahead. So with that, let's just switch it on to some of the other projects you've been involved with. Are you being like Tim, where they've mainly been in the UK, or have you also done some stuff in warmer waters?
So a bit of a mix, really. I am very passionate about UK diving, and the projects that I run are certainly based in the UK. So the Loch Long and sort of Portland Harbour Rex projects. But I also enjoy traveling abroad for diving, and one of the other projects that I was really privileged to go and take part in was another Project Baseline related project out in the fantastic setting of Sardinia, down in the Mediterranean. And this was another citizen science project, but this time a cave project, and working with a PhD researcher, we were collecting sediment samples in the coastal caves over in Sardinia, which are fantastic. So fantastic clear water in the sea as you get in off the boat, clear water all through the cave, and then you come ashore to this fantastic holiday destination where you can get great coffee, great ice cream, and also contribute to citizen science, which obviously is why we were there. But looking at microorganisms in the sediment and tracking how far into the cave they were present, and then using that over time and monitoring if that changes to look at whether there are any climate impacts that were causing that, and whether it could be used as a measure of climate change. And that was a fantastic project. There were 3 boats of divers, all levels, including open water divers, doing some survey around the entrance to the cave. And it really goes to show what citizen scientists and recreational divers can do with just a little bit of sort of commitment and leadership and interest in giving something back. And for me, it was really, really rewarding and something great to do with our hobby of diving.
That's fantastic. So we heard from Tim. What was his most memorable experience? What's your most memorable diving experience?
Yeah, so I think there's one that stands out. We were diving off the sort of north end of the Sound of Mull. This was a long time ago now, maybe 15 years ago. And it was very, very close into the shore. So we did a drift dive over this fantastic broken up wreck, really clear water. And we'd had a fantastic day out on the boat. And we were surfacing. We just done our stop at 5 meters. I was bringing the surface marker buoy in, and I was with 2 other guys. And I got to about 1 meter, and the other 2 were on the surface and were clearly sort of looking for the boat and how we would get back onto the boat. And just as my head sort of broke the surface of the water, and I was putting the last turns on this SMB, this huge kind of shadow caught my attention just out the corner of my eye. I remember thinking, there's something big over there. I'm not sure what it must be. Put my head back down, and there was this basking shark swimming straight towards us, mouth shut, which was a little bit off-putting because you weren't too sure what it was, because it couldn't have been too many things in UK waters. And I remember saying to the 2 guys, you need to put your head down. There's a basking shark coming right towards us. And you can imagine the reaction I got, which was, yeah, get out. You're having me on. We're 10, 15 meters from the shore. But no, this thing just swam straight between 3 of us. We got some pictures of it, and then got on the boat and went home. It was a moment not to be forgotten, that's for sure. No,
and that just shows there you don't have to be deep to have memorable moments.
Absolutely.
And who says that UK diving is just deep, dark, and dingy and everything? There, you're in the shallows with a basking shark trying to run you down while you're finishing your safety stop. What can be better than that? Like it. So that was your most memorable experience. What's your funniest diving experience?
It was funny to me. Whether this will be funny to others or not, I'm not sure. But I went up to Florida to do my second cave course. And there were 3 of us on this class, and we'd been out there for 5 or 6 days, really honing our skills and getting what we thought was really proficient at cave diving. And on the last day, throughout the course, the instructor had said to us, if you get to the right standard, on the last day, we'll go and do this sort of signature dive in a place called Ginny Springs in Florida. A fantastic freshwater spring, brilliant cave. There's quite a lot of flow in this cave, so it's a real effort to get any distance in, and you've really got to work hard against the flow to get into the cave. And on the way, well, both on the way in and on the way out, but it's more of a hazard on the way out, there's a particular part of the cave where it goes quite narrow, and it's like a sort of letterbox shape. It's about the right height for a diver and a set of doubles, just about. And three, what we thought was really cool looking divers coming out of this fantastic final course dive, thought we would just seamlessly glide through this little gap in the cave and drift our way out into our decompression, and you know, big thumbs up, well done, you passed the courses. I remember I came up to this letterbox first, and very glamorously slammed into the top of the letterbox with the valves on my cylinders. Thought, that's fine, I'll just dump a little bit of gas out of my cylinders to get through. Down onto my belly, I ended up crawling through, probably kicking up I don't know how much sediment. I'm feeling really bad. I thought I'd watch to see how the other two get on, to see how it's done. Needless to say, number 2 straight into the rock, number 3 straight into the rock, and then the 2 instructors, one of which was from the UK, John Kendall, giggling through his regulator and his mask filling with water. So yeah, it was certainly an amusing moment looking back on it. Yeah, it was a good one.
I like it though. It just harks back to your lovely hover. With that, it just shows that not everyone's a diving superhero right from the moment, even if you might be thinking in your mind you are.
Absolutely.
I like it. That's fantastic. Right, well, let's bring Tim back in. He's hiding in our green room.
Hello again.
Tim, welcome back.
Excellent. And that's a cracking story about basking sharks. You've reminded me of one in almost the same place as well, which blew my mind. You know, we were supposed to be looking for some deep wreck that day, and instead we didn't find a wreck. The conditions weren't right for it at all, and we saw basking sharks at the surface, pretty much where you were. That's awesome. Really cool.
Hey, I reckon it's a group of basking sharks that just know they can go and like wind divers up.
Well, they're on a diver spotting ticket.
Do this.
They bought a course.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's like, that's it. It's their own citizen science. If you swim around this area, you might be lucky enough
You'll see a diver.
Yeah. So we've said that citizen science obviously is a great thing for divers to get involved with. What is the best way for people to get involved in some of these projects? So I'll give that one over to Tim first.
Talk to some people. Find a project that you like, that's inspiring you. I can see some comments going on in the chat there. People are asking about Project Baseline. So go and find something that really, really floats your boat and start talking. Divers love talking about their projects. We always want to get in touch with people. I can remember being inspired by the sort of Wakula stuff 20 years ago to do with mapping. I can remember thinking that GUE was really cool then as well, because it was brand new and shiny. I'll hide that for a second. But I did stay with IANTD. So go and talk to people, find out how to get involved. It doesn't matter who you are. If you've got a little action camera, you can do something with it. So don't be shy, ask questions.
Sounds good. Marcus, do you have anything to add from your side?
No, I think Tim's absolutely right. I mean, the easiest ways as an already qualified diver are, I think, through things like Sea Search and Project Baseline are 2 good examples. But even as a non-diver, there are plenty of sort of coastal related things that you can get involved with, such as doing little surveys on the shoreline where you collect sediment and count the plastics that are in there. So you can just go on and Google sort of citizen science opportunities in the UK and things like that. That will come up. So I find it's quite easy to get into those initial stages. I don't think there's any hiding that to take it a bit further can be quite challenging. So for me, the real strength of Project Baseline comes when we have collaborations and we have scientific and conservation agency support. So things like Sea Search is a great one, an obvious one. Ghost fishing is a good example of something that you can get involved with fairly easily. So there's plenty out there. It's just a case of looking and accepting it's going to be a little bit of effort and a bit of commitment to get into.
It's worth.
Sorry, go on, Tim.
It's worth pointing out, actually, the BZAC has a prize each year for club projects as well. So if you're a BZAC diver, you can join forces with your club. This is what the BZAC is brilliant at, is club collaborations. And there used to be a thing called the like a not Duke of Edinburgh Award, but he was the patron. And we came runner-up for a survey at Half Tide Rock in Menai Strait one year. So there's a BZAC route for this as well, for project diving. So get involved in it.
That's great. And I mean, we've touched on this before. You don't need to be an experienced diver to be doing this. You could do this, as Marcus mentioned, you could just be someone who's interested in the sea. You know, you can do coastal-based stuff. You could be a relatively novice diver all the way through to technical divers and everything. So any diver could do it. Is there any particular qualities that you look for in divers to be involved in projects and stuff from your point? Tim, go to you.
Curiosity. We sort of want people who want to sort of do a little bit more, see something new. It's what inspires us to dive in the first place, is to go and see something we've never seen before. And you can go on the same dive 100 times and you can see something if you're prepared to look in a new way. If you look at a new way, you'll find something new. You'll be more excited. That will rub off on some other people, and eventually you'll have a project. That's it. So it's curiosity.
Go, Marcus, what about you?
Yeah, I'd certainly agree. Curiosity is important. There's probably two I would add to that. I think an element of commitment. I mean, and not huge commitment, but it does take a little bit of effort to get involved with some of these things. Sea search, you've got to go off and do a short course in. If you want to set up a small project somewhere, there's a bit of coordination to do there, which isn't always easy, dealing with lots of people and bringing them together for diving. And I think people who are competent in the water, so solid skill sets, are also another great attribute, because they just make you. It means the diving is just happening. You don't have to think about the diving when you're then trying to apply yourself and kind of do data gathering underwater as well.
Yeah, and I know that, talking about like solid skills as a diver, I know that there are some. Obviously, you mentioned ghost fishing. That's probably one that is more for like the experienced level diver, where they're doing that because of the nature of what you're doing, dealing with monofilament netting, etc., etc.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, you can be a relatively inexperienced diver to get involved with ghost fishing, and they do a course to look at your skills and get you up to speed. But yeah, there is a certain element of experience, and there is obviously an element of risk that comes with lifting ghost gear underwater. But yeah, again, the better your basic skills, the more prepared you'll be to get involved with something like that.
Yeah, that's it. Now, I think we've touched on this to an extent, but it's really what is your overriding reasons that you could say to people to get involved with a citizen science project? Tim, let you go first.
I'm going to hark back to the privilege of being underwater. It's not something that's open to everybody. You know, people love to hear about what you've been doing. If you had any other hobby and you came back and you talked about it, then people would be fascinated. And diving, really, now we've just got the skills and the technology to bring things back and show people. If it's little action cameras, or if it's photogrammetry and you can turn a dive site around for the sort of the 3D generation. Those are the things. So if we can go underwater and see these things personally, we've kind of got a duty to bring it back. And if we want these things to exist for our kids and everybody else, then we need to sort of take some responsibility for sharing those stories and making sure that they don't get trashed brutally.
Yeah, sounds good. Marcus?
Yeah, I completely agree with Tim's last point. I think that's absolutely spot on. I think the other two things I'd perhaps add in there are, I find it quite rewarding to actually go and do something as part of a project and have something to show people on completion. So whether that be lifting some pots off a wreck that you can put on the jetty and say, look, we've lifted those, there's something we've achieved, or whether it's a 3D model or some pictures and video of something you've done with your weekend. I find that really rewarding personally, and also it's actually great just socially. So mixing with divers who are like-minded and keen and passionate about the sport, and it brings people together for a reason, and I find that really exciting as well.
Yeah, this is something which we've like chatted about in the green room really before we came on. Is this diving with a purpose?
Yeah.
Is the crux of citizen science, if you like. We said, you've got people who are diving, that reach a plateau with their recreational diving. Yes, we know there are some people who are quite happy, stay at one level, dive X amount of times a year and really enjoy it, which is great. You've got people who veer off to go into underwater photography. You've got people who veer off to start up the dive professional ladder to become an instructor. And you've got people who are tempted by the dark side to strap on side mounts and twin sets and rebreathers and go technical diving. But for the people who none of those really float their boat, this is something that they could do with the kit that they've got now, with the skills that they've got now to an extent, and then just learn a bit more. But it brings them a reason for going diving as opposed to just being in the water and enjoying themselves. And I think that's a big crux of it. I know that you're a big one behind that, Tim.
Yes, I had a trip up to Scapa Flow with Rich Walker a couple of years ago for a scientific diving conference, and I banged on about him for some length. He made the mistake of falling asleep early in the trip from Fobster, so he woke up after 3 hours and had 9 hours of me yapping away at him going, isn't this all brilliant, with far too much coffee on board. But that was diving with a purpose. And I think I've kind of felt that we should leave behind this recreational or technical divide. We're all divers. We want to go and do something. We're going to use whatever's appropriate. We're going to dive at the level we can do. And if it inspires us to be better divers, cool. And if the tools that we fancy buying, need a reason for that rebreather or a DPV, enable us to go and tell a different story, well, that's going to help you justify that purchase or that next level thing. So it all works. It's just great.
What about you, Marcus? You got anything to add to that?
Only that's the best excuse for buying new dive.
No, but it is. But I think we're right with the diving for a purpose side of things. I do like that. That people can get involved. Like you said, it's a reason to develop your diving skills. Yes, it's a reason to buy kit, which is always a good thing. Who needs an excuse to buy shiny new dive equipment? But also, it's a reason to develop your skills, reason to develop your skill set, your equipment, to be able to go, deeper, longer, explore that new area, etc., etc. So, that can only be beneficial for everybody in the diving industry, especially given the current situation where we've all been on a bit of a temporary hiatus through no fault of our own. And this could well be a way of invigorating people getting back into the water after this, enforced drive patch.
Anything that makes people more enthusiastic about diving is going to be a good thing. So we've got people who do dive. We want to keep them diving longer, and we want to excite people who don't dive. We want them to come into diving. That way diving gets bigger, which is good for everybody, So it's that's kind of where it fits on both ways. So no one's trying to take more than their fair share. It's just a good way of expanding the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think it also benefits some of the organisations that we contribute to as divers as well. So Sea Search, as an example, or some of the other research organisations that we work with, if they only use their own sort of qualified scientific divers to go and collect data, the data set would be a lot smaller. Whereas using citizen divers who are going out and doing this diving anyway and just collecting this data almost as a side product of what they're doing also helps those organisations, helps them kind of lobby for change. It's increased data sets and evidence for what's going on. So I think it does work both ways, albeit it can sometimes be challenging to demonstrate to some of those scientific bodies that what recreational divers can produce is valuable. But I firmly believe that it is if it's done in the right way.
There's a great example of that in, I think, somewhere in Weymouth Bay or that sort of East Dorset direction, where there was a marine conservation zone or a designated area that was about to be made as a kind of normal, like the sea works in boxes kind of a way. And the data from Sea Search actually enabled them to keep the whole of this habitat with an extra bit in it, and therefore protect something on a whole basis rather than sort of civil servants ruler basis, which we so often apply straight lines to the sea. But on this occasion, we were able to put the right wiggly line in. That was all citizen science. So it made a difference to actual policy. You can do stuff. And look at bringing back stories. If we don't tell a story of coral reef bleaching, no one really believes us. This is trying to connect people with a bit more of the demonstrated truth, really.
Yeah, and that comes back to this shifting baseline point that I talked about a little bit earlier on. If you were to go and dive a bleached coral reef and it was the first time you'd ever been underwater, you'd probably think, wow, full of life everywhere. Yeah. But show a picture or a photo from 10, 15 years ago, and it would be really obvious that was in a much worse place.
Look at the Mediterranean. We see all these sort of, amazing wrecks laid out before us. And in fact, they should be completely obscured by fish. Yeah. And they've been eaten mainly, I think.
Well, yeah, I was going to say. But this is the thing. It's like you said, it's the rewarding side of it. If you're going out and doing these citizen science projects, it's great from a personal point of view that you feel like you've contributed and you come back and you feel like you've actually done something. But then, as Tim said, if you're involved in something that actually involves policy change, that's a real sense of, achievement. And you just think, I was part of that.
Yeah.
And then I can imagine the social side of it's good as well. Like you said, you've got like-minded people. You're all sat there. Yes, you're all divers. We know what divers are like. We all like talking about diving. We've been on liverboards and everything. It's just, common practice. Everyone's waffling about diving. But to actually be able to sit and be talking about the science side of things, I can imagine that can lead people on to go on to new projects, because you get chatting there, find out what somebody's done before, and then, that sounds good, and then leads them on to that.
Yeah. It's a bit like the story of a wreck, because we can identify with wrecks because they're human things. And you go there and go, wow, humans were on this, it was sailing, and it wasn't sailing, and now we're diving on it, but we can still relate to all the human-sized things. So you've got the story of the ship, the story of the sinking, the story of what the wreck is now, and then a whole nother story to do with the things that now make it its home. And that leads you on to going, it's not just a wreck, there is marine life here, and then you see this marine life again somewhere else, and before you know it, you're not a wreck diver anymore. Like, oops, that's maybe not quite what you anticipated doing, but it does demonstrate how one thing leads along, and that curiosity takes you into somewhere where you didn't expect to go to, but it's still cool.
I think the point you make on the social side of things is really important as well, Mark, because at the end of the day, we do diving for fun. We don't do it to add another huge stress and kind of work, place of work to our lives. So for me, the people that come to the projects, the skills that they bring are the real strength of them. So up in Loch Long, we're really lucky to have people come from Northern Europe, all over the UK, and we have a great time as well as adding value and collecting data. And it certainly does lead to further projects as well. So, in the bar of an evening when you're discussing the successes, or probably just as likely the failures you've had that day, that's when you spawn new ideas for going diving and new projects. So definitely another point to highlight in terms of the advantages of this type of diving.
Yeah, no, I can see that. Now, we've obviously talked about some of the stuff that you had coming up, which you're all mega enthused about and looking forward to, that have kind of been, postponed either for this year or have just been pushed to later on in the year. Are there any other projects that you've got kind of in the pipeline that are coming up over the next year or two? Go for Marcus first. Let us know what you've got planned.
Yeah, so in the UK, Project Baseline UK is, as an entity, is pretty new. Literally a few weeks. We've had the regional projects for quite a while. So I'm quite excited about doing a little bit more with Project Baseline next year and the following years as well. So a couple of things we're hoping to have lined up are going to do some documentation of a couple of submarine wrecks for the Royal Navy Submarine Museum. So producing some images and video. And if I can twist John Kendall's arm hard enough, maybe even a 3D model that they can then put up for display in the form of the Submarine Museum down in, well, it will be up in Faz Lane. And also we've got a week planned in May with Shane and Dive Open and Argyle. So hopefully working with Sea Search and a couple of other PhD research scientists to do some data collection for them. So I guess like the Loch Long project, but a little bit bigger. And that's really what I'm hoping Project Baseline UK will be. It'll be sort of a showstopper piece once a year, where we bring the most capable kind of project divers together and do something a little bit more spectacular than perhaps we have done today. So that's what I'm excited about for next year and afterwards.
That's good. Sounds like you got a lot coming our way. What about you, Tim?
Well, we'll have a look at citizen science of Lobster's Key, which we haven't really done before. We'll come back to that white-clawed crayfish monitoring project in the autumn this year. Hopefully we'll be reloading the London Marine Festival for next summer, and that is quite big. So that's sort of taken up a lot of time so far, and I'll be looking forward to that for next year. The other thing I'm interested in personally is the use of photogrammetry. We've seen people do lots during lockdown. Marcus has run some great things with models. We've seen people do wrecks. I'm really, really keen to see this turn into things like reefs, so that we've got something that we can then look at changes over time or integrate that with sea search data. That's a longer term thing. The other thing, if we have a little wish list as well, if there's anybody keen computer app developers out there, if you go and look for like diving citizen science apps, you'll find almost none. There's the occasional seahorse spotting app. There was a marine life app in Scotland that was funded as a pilot project for a while, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's disappeared now. So, if you want divers to hook into modern technology, then we need to provide this stuff, like Strava for divers, or I did this, or that social angle to broaden it out into people and harness in non-divers as well. So I'm keen to see the technology come into diving on that side of things as well. So, yeah,
that all sounds good. So, we've said like how people can get involved with, Google searching, etc., talking to people to come in and find out how they're going to get involved with this. If they want to get involved with the stuff that you guys are doing, like the Lundy stuff, the project baseline up in Scotland, what's the best ways of them finding out about getting involved with that? Marcus, let you go first.
So Project Baseline UK and Project Baseline Loch Long and the Port Harbour Recs as well, they all have Facebook groups and all pages that you can go on and follow. By all means, they can get in touch with me directly through Facebook or through those pages. And actually, a bit of a shameless plug, anybody that can add anything to a project, we'd really welcome a discussion for Project Baseline UK and some of the stuff we're going to do. So yeah, it's super easy, certainly from a Project Baseline perspective. And if they want to start their own small project somewhere because they dive regularly, then I can help them out with that, or they can go straight to the projectbaseline.org website and get the support direct from Project Baseline. So super easy from a Project Baseline perspective, and we welcome anybody that wants to come and join us.
Fantastic. Tim, what about your side of things?
Getting involved in the London Marine Festival. I've just seen a comment on the chat there, just under the one that accuses me of looking like Rich Walker as well, that's a shock. I mean, younger Rich Walker, you do realise he's only 30. So London Marine Project, they do have their own web page because it's not just divers. Or you can get in touch with me at Vobster. It's not terribly hard to track me down. There are, and the crayfish is Vobster as well, so you can track me down there. info@Vobster, there's the email address. And keep an eye on the Facebook pages. There are news things that go up regularly, and all of these things also exist as events, which Vobster is running as well. So if you go and like one of those things, that's cool. Come and see us talk at the excellent Go Diving show next year, I hope, and keep in touch with things that way. Really, everyone's always looking for volunteers. Go and do a sea search course, like Marcus said earlier on. You'll find them linking you up with people in your area, and it all snowballs from there.
Fantastic, that's great. Well, thank you guys for joining us to talk us about citizen science. I think that's been very illuminating. Hopefully that has inspired lots of new people to come and inundate you with offers of assistance, which would be great to see. So yeah, massive thank you for joining us on the virtual sofa, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. Thank you very much.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers. So final shout out as well for MeFlex hoses. Remember, their online store is open during this downtime. So if you want to color code your regs to match up with your kit, or just add a little bit of color so you're not all in black, check them out. Last thing to say is just join us on Friday, the 29th of May. We'll be back with the next live stream at 3 p.m. British Standard Time. We've got Phil Medcalf and Paul Duxfield coming. They're going to be talking about all things underwater photography, many different aspects of it, and lots of ways of things we can be doing while we're in our downtime, up skills with the camera, after camera, Photoshop, etc., and bring you questions. So I'll look forward to seeing you then. Remember, if you like what we're doing, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Stay safe.